the SheBelieves Cup has ended for the Matildas, and they do so without a victory, only managing 2 shots on target throughout the 3 game series. Of some comfort might be the fact that both of those shots on target actually found their way past their respective keepers. But overall, it was a highly disappointing 3 game window, and we're going to unpack it all today. With the primary theme being, did we actually learn anything from this window, Burke?
Um, I think, given my hesitation, the answer is probably no.
Lucky, same question to you. Did we actually learn anything from this window?
Look, you might argue that you had knowledge of this beforehand. I think clearly we now know that Tegan Micah should be the number one keeper for the Matildas. For me, she was best on park in both of the games she played, so that is a learning. You can look at that as the positive and say we took that out of it. You could look at it in the negative way and say, why were we considering Mackenzie Arnold when she's in pre-season and Tegan Marcus been playing for Liverpool for a few months? But, swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Yeah, we'll tackle the game that just happened against Colombia first. So, in the first half, the Matildas once again failed to generate a shot on target. The defensive frailties were on full display from the get-go. But Tegan Micah, as we've just touched on, clearly showed she's the number one goalkeeper. There's nothing she could do about either of the goals she conceded in this 2-1 loss. One was a very wicked deflection for the second goal, and the other one was just an absolute worldie that might go down as or might have gone down as goal of the tournament were it not for some of the displays that we saw from Japan in the first 2 games. The big difference in the first half for me was Colombia punished the mistakes from the Matildas, and the Matildas failed to do so in the other direction. Katrina Gorry turns the ball over for what ultimately ended up being the Wendy Bonilla goal, and the Matildas gifted 2 very high danger opportunities, both in and around the 18-yard box. One fell to Michelle Heyman, who I'm not sure what she was trying to do. Never seemed like she had control of the ball and was a routine save for the keeper, and then Kyra Cooney-Cross putting her shot off to the left. Lockie, I'll come to you first. Does that sort of sum up the Matildas campaign, that first half?
Yeah, it's probably a pretty fair assessment of it. It was like that one from Heyman, and then Kyra had one as well, where it's just like you're in the position. I know you're not used to it, but this is where we shoot, and they just couldn't get the ball from out of their feet. I don't know what was happening, and the goal that ends up going in is just kind of one made by grit, right, by Hayley Razzo. It's not kind of the silky football that we wish we could play every week. It was just kind of sheer determination to get one across the line. So yeah, probably is a fairly apt descriptor.
Burke, Colombia in that first half didn't entirely look great when they were asked to have possession for an extended period. They clearly came in with a game plan of wanting to play in transition, and when they got the chance to play in transition, showed every single bit of their world class. Number 21 ranked in the world coming into this tournament, might have shot up a spot or two after this somewhat dominant victory over the Matildas. But, should the Matildas have made more of that? That, this was a side who clearly came in with a game plan. They didn't want to shift from said game plan, and the Matildas just looked limp in attack.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of points during both halves where we had really good opportunities and we just failed to make the most of them and to even get the final, I guess, play off, the final shot. So it was a bit disappointing. I think we looked a lot, what's the right word? We looked cohesive, I would say, more so than we have in the other games. Um, but yeah, Colombia are very good. Linda Caicedo is very, very good. She's also very fast. She exposed us a lot. Um, and unfortunately, I feel she did more so at the end of the game, um, when Alana Murphy got subbed in, which is no fault to Alana Murphy. Not many people are as fast as Linda Caicedo. But yeah, we did get exposed a lot down the side there.
Yeah, Burke. And then the second half, the Matildas very much were in attacking mode. They started the half well. They were eventually rewarded with the goal to Haley Razzo, which took a deflection on the way through. Their only shot on target for the game, which was then cancelled out by another deflected shot to uh, who's the player? It was to Catalina Usme just 4 minutes later, and I just I look at this and I think you come in with a lineup that once again lacks inspiration, and this was something that a lot of people pointed out throughout the tournament, in the lead up to the tournament, that are we going to see something different, or is it going to be the same stock standard Matildas lineup that we all know and sometimes love, sometimes hate? Um, and we saw that in the opening game against Japan where it was stock standard, and then there's been a little bit of rotation, but for the most part, if you asked me to, pick a lineup out of a random number generator, I probably could have picked a much different lineup than this that might have been more inspiring.
Yeah, you probably could have. I think most of us could have. I did like Tash Pryor coming in. I thought she was quite good. Quite good. She was very good, actually. Um, yeah, yeah, it was a bit flat. I don't know why we didn't see Holly McNamara personally. I don't know if they were constricted with her minutes because she is still, I guess, returning, but I would have really liked to have seen her in the game. I think Mary Fowler was excellent when she came in, um, but yeah, it's a tried and tested lineup, but it's very predictable now for our opponents. So,
If I can jump on that, Poletti,
Yeah.
it feels to me, if you make a comparison to a club side, say like Sydney FC in the dub this year, right? It's like you can't, it's those last few games at the end of a season. Nothing exciting for the team is going to happen right now. So we're going to shake things up a bit because we can, and we just have these games to play before we get into preseason or next season where we can start from zero and start building again. That's essentially the holding pattern that the Matildas are in at the moment. We know they don't have a permanent coach, and as I'm sure you'll get into, that's going to be a little bit of a longer wait now. It's not like any kind of build with a new coach for the Asian Cup was going to start today. We just kind of had to get through these games to get to that point, and that's what it kind of felt up with the lineup. It's just kind of let's throw some new faces in. That's fine in slightly different combinations, and that's all well and good. But we're really not going to learn all that much.
And I think that was emphasised by two players who seemingly didn't have minutes restrictions, which were Haley Rasso and Ellie Carpenter. Rasso playing all 270 minutes, and you suspect that would have been the same for Carpenter had she not gone off injured in the first half. But what benefit does playing Ellie Carpenter into the ground do for Tom Samani and the Matildas? We know what she can do. I think back to the Disney Plus documentary where she talked about, how her ACL injury was just a much needed break that she desperately needed because she'd basically been playing week in and week out for, multiple years in a row. And then she comes back and suddenly it's let's play her every minute of every game for club and country until we burn her out again and she does another injury. Like, this is not sustainable for someone who should still be a stalwart of the Matildas lineup for the next decade.
yeah, I think we really should have let Torpy start this game. I think we should have had other, like, we should have been doing other things. We know exactly, like you said, what she can do, what she brings us, but it never hurts to try someone else because then we know we can go back to Ellie Carpenter. Um, and I think Torpy was quite good as well for the time that well, bit, half and a bit that she had. So yeah, I don't want to see Carpenter run into the ground again because it's not necessary. We do know we have backups for her. We learnt that the first time we had to play without her with Charlie Grant. We don't need to do that again. We can prevent this. I don't know why we're not. I think it's very silly.
Lockie, I think perhaps the most disappointing thing to come out of both this game and the entire window is that after the second game, Tom Samani, in his post-game press conference, said that, you know, when asked about Mackenzie Arnold and Tegan Micah, recognised preseason being a genuine reason as to why someone like Arnold might be out of form, and why Micah has shown what she's shown. But then he starts Mackenzie Arnold in the first game. You've got players like Alana Kennedy who are also in preseason, and Caitlin Torpey, another one of those in preseason. It just felt like a very uninspired squad selection overall. And I know there were a couple of injuries, Claire Wheeler and the like, but it was playing players that either haven't played in 2+ months, or in the case of an Emily Van Egmont, she's only just left San Diego and had one, maybe 2 games for Birmingham in the second tier of English football. Like, I don't know. It seems to represent a holding pattern here that is going to continue for a while longer, with Tom Samani or James Johnson confirming today that Tom Samani will be in charge for the April window against South Korea as part of the 1 year to go to the Asian Cup press conferences today. That leaves 5 windows now at most for a new coach to analyze the squad, or analyze the players available, embed their tactics, and ultimately select the 23-player squad for the Asian Cup that's here in Australia. I fear that the holding pattern has lasted too long at this point, and that it's going to negatively impact the Asian Cup.
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit the other day, didn't we? And I can't help escaping the thought that if you think about the dream scenario and it's the morning of the Asian Cup final, the Matildas are there, and you're thinking about the story that brought them to that moment, isn't it just like perfectly Australian football of them to be in such a horrible spot 12 months before, and you have the story, the new coach comes in, it's a big marker, then slowly but surely, you're getting some friendly results, a new breakout player comes on the scene, and then you start the tournament and you build your way into it. And we talked about this last week. Again, football and everything in life is a roller coaster. You have ups and downs. If we're at this point 12 months before the tournament, there's hardly any room to go back down after we go up a little bit. It's just such a short runway. So look, it's absolutely gone on too long, to the significant detriment of this window and the few windows before it. We have to wait and see in terms of will this be right or not. But if it is the right coach that comes along and can get things moving quickly, then it's an Asian Cup on home soil. Those don't come around too often, right? So the Matildas have ridden waves of momentum brilliantly before, and they're going to have to ride a big one if they're going to have success this time.
And Burke, I'm aware that was a very loaded question with multiple questions worked into it, but the same to you.
Yeah, no offense to Tom Samani, because he's a great guy, but I think we've gotten everything we can from him. Obviously, I still hope we're going to get some good results. I don't know if we will, but yeah, I really hate that this situation has dragged out so long, because they knew before the World Cup had even ended that we weren't getting a contract extension, for Tony. So they've had all the time in the world, and they still are giving themselves even more and more time to find this head coach. And yeah, the fact that we also don't have coaches for the under-20s and the under-17s, I believe. I'm sorry, this would never happen in the men's game, ever. This is it's actually insane at this point. It's very amateur hour from us. We're meant to be we hosted the Women's World Cup 2 years ago. We had a massive tournament. We should be still riding the high of that. But here we are, 12 months before a home Asian Cup with no head coach for our senior team, our under-20s team, or our under-17s team. I don't know. I don't like it. I understand how we got here, but we shouldn't have gotten here. And I see everything that Football Australia says, and I get it. I get it. But that doesn't mean I have to like it, and I don't like it. Yeah,
It's almost like those
it all
the under
sucks.
17s and the under 20s is like even more inexcusable because that's not like a short term wait for the perfect person thing. That is, these under 20s that have just gone away and won this series against some of the Pacific nations in the Thailand team as well, the under 20s. And it's like, well, this is a long term building our future. It's not like we have to wait for the perfect person. Like get someone in who's going to be able to mentor these girls. So in 5 to 6 years time, they're ready to break into the first team.
I feel like part of the reason, and I think just coming back off that Pacific Oz Four Nations series, Corey Babington, who was the assistant coach under Leah Blaney, was named as the interim for that series and wasn't announced until quite literally the week of the tournament in media releases. Is the idea that they're waiting for the senior coach to come in to select the personnel that they want to guide the next generation of Matildas players or potential Matildas players. And Lockie, when you look at, as Burke touched on with the men's side, Graham Arnold quit, and less than 2 weeks later, Tony Popovich is in, with 3 weeks to go before a window. We all knew that Tony Gustafsson was not getting his contract renewed, bar maybe a gold medal performance. Someone like Joe Montemuro was available. The Matildas let him slip through the fingers. He's now on a 2-year fixed contract at Lyon. As Burke said, it feels inexcusable, and it just feels like a federation that doesn't. Okay, saying they don't know what they're doing would be incredibly, incredibly harsh, but it feels like they're being very reactive as opposed to being very proactive in this situation. And now the only reason they're being proactive is because they're being forced to.
It definitely feels like they missed the boat with Joe. If I'm remembering correctly, he was available between the World Cup and the Olympics, right? That was the slot we missed. And so obviously the end of Tony's contract was the Olympic Games, and that's kind of how the cycle works. But obviously it is tricky with the women's game, essentially having three major tournaments. It's not like the men's where you have this big window of time off and you have more time to refresh. It really comes at you quickly. And so it would have been a very brave decision at the time to say, Tony, we're actually going to cut your contract 6 months short and we're going to bring Joe in now when we have the chance. And that would have been really tough to make. But as you say, the trade-off of that is that if they really thought that he was the one guy like they do now, or at least it seems it could still be someone else. But if they've now come to the conclusion that he's the guy and they're willing to wait, well, then they probably should have had the courage to make that decision in that window and cut Tony's contract short. That's what it seems like to me.
Burke, if reports in the media were to be believed, Football Australia had a chance to do that because Tony Gustafsson wanted out to go take up, I believe it was an assistant role with the Swedish men's national team. So they had a chance to essentially kickstart this process 6 months before the Olympics. And again, if media reports are to be believed, Football Australia said, no, we want you to see out your contract through to the Olympics. We don't want to do anything now. And here we are, 9 months later, and they're still looking for a coach while Gustafsson already has another job.
Yeah. Uh, Obviously, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, they absolutely should have taken that opportunity when they had it. But I can also see the merit in wanting to see him finish out the contract because they had a formula. It was working. The team really liked him. Um, but yeah, looking back, they absolutely should have made that choice then. I wish they had of. I think we all wish they had of, but they didn't, and now we are here.
And in a holding pattern that just seems to keep on going, and the fear be starting to become very, very real that the Matildas might run out of fuel and crash land before they get out of the holding pattern. Looking ahead to the South Korea window, Burke, it feels like it's going to be more of the same with the same 23 players, maybe a couple of bolters coming in because of injury or something like that. But it just feels like it's going to be the same 23. We're not going to learn anything. We're playing, Asian opposition in South Korea, which should provide a good landing point ahead of the Asian Cup, which is what we all thought the Japan game was going to be, but with a coach who just doesn't seem to want to try anything innovative, either because he's unwilling to or he's been told he's not able to, and the status quo is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm very scared. We saw what South Korea can do to us last time, and that was when we were probably playing a lot better football, I dare to say. Yeah, I'm very scared. Yeah, I do think it's going to end up being more of the same, mostly because, like, as an interim coach, you don't necessarily have to push boundaries. You just have to see through your duties as interim coach, because you're not building anything. You're not the one that's kickstarting the process or anything. You're literally just there to see them through to the next head coach, which again is not shade to Tom Samani. I think any other person that we'd put in as interim at this point would be doing the same or similar, because if you don't have to, why would you? But yeah, I don't think it's going to be good unless they suddenly decide they want to win, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's a very flat feeling to go from these games and then see South Korea around the corner. I'm not excited at this point in time. Like, I'll be excited to see the team again because I'm always excited to see the Matildas play, but I'm not excited for what's going to happen.
And Lockie, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I echo Burke's sentiment, really. I mean, everything we've been talking about with this team in this window, it's not exactly new. Like, even if we think back to last year, the win against Germany was definitely the highlight, obviously, post-Olympics. Then we come back and we play Brazil and lose twice. We beat Chinese Taipei. I went and watched the game at Amy Park. I know they scored a couple of nice goals, but really it wasn't that much of a convincing performance. And then we're here at the SheBelieves Cup, and to look at a side like South Korea, up with Japan in terms of one of the best Asian women's football sides. Yeah, if we're still going to be in this holding pattern without a permanent coach, I can't really find a strong argument as to why it wouldn't be more of the same, which is unfortunate. You just got to, cop the brunt of it and hold firm, and then just hope you come out okay on the other side of it, mainly with a good team mentality and hopefully a bit of a collective attitude. That's the thing we can hope for.
Yeah, and it seems hope is all we have at the moment. But that will do for this mini episode of the Dubcast, part of the Ramble Australia podcast network, this recap of the She Believes Cup. Burke, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And Lockie, thank you as well.
Cheers, Poletti.
We'll be back on Wednesday for our full-length weekly episode to recap round 17 of the A-League Women. Thank you very much for tuning in. Goodbye.